Let's talk about annotation and how we can take these measurements and change the scale of them in relationship to our object. So the first thing to talk about is the properties. So sometimes you have these tabs on the right side and you have your properties open, and when you select an annotation, you will see it automatically goes under not the object properties, but the properties of this annotation, which in this case is a radial dimension. Now, one thing to note is there is different types of annotation. For example, this one here is a linear dimension. So sometime you may be editing some of these settings and you may think that they apply to everything, all of your annotations, and they do not. They only apply to the type of annotation that you're editing. So that can be a little confusing. So let's go over how we can change the size of all of the text of all of our annotation, regardless of the type of dimension or annotation type. Um, so there's a few ways to do it. One of them is to do it here, which is it's a bit difficult for the reason I just explained, because there is different types of annotation. Now, one of the best ways to edit all of your dimensions all at once is to edit the style. And there's two ways to get there. One is to use this menu under Properties and then click on Edit Style. And you will see here you're actually under the document properties. So it opens up the document properties and it automatically goes to your current style for the annotations. The second method of getting to the same place would be go under File and Properties. Now under Properties, you may not get to the dimension right away. You might be under, I don't know, Advanced or Aliases. You may land on a different page, but your annotation will be the first one. So go all the way at the top, expand the annotation style, and you can see all of the styles that you currently have. Now you can create a new style, you can edit the current style, and you can also delete one of these styles if you don't need it anymore or if you just don't like it. So there's a bunch of reasons for this. One of the most common one is if you work on consumer electronics, you might want millimeters and something very small size. But if you work on furniture design, you may need to use inches. And also there's fractions, right? Do you want fractions or decimals? So in this case, let's look at how we would modify this style or create a new one. So if I wanted to use the current one, which is millimeter architectural, I would just go in here and change some of these settings, and you can see they can be expanded. You can change the font, the size, but in general, for the overall size of all of your annotations, what you can do is click here on the model space scale. And if you change that to something like something smaller in this case because it's too large, let's do something like 2. Sometimes you see this thing update. I don't know if it works right now. No, it does not. But so in some cases you can see an update here where it shows you, oh, your arrows will become bigger in relationship to the text and kind of illustrate that depending on some of these settings. But so for now, let's just change the model space and let's see how it changes the annotation here. And so the way that you apply the change is by clicking here on Scale All Sizes. When you click here, it will update everything and it will ask you, what is it you want to do? And so it says the scale factor was 1 and we want it to be 2. So let's click on 2, press OK, and apply. And nothing has changed. So let's see, why did nothing change? That's because the style of our dimension is set to millimeter small, not millimeter architectural. So I just edited the wrong style. So if you make the same mistake I just made, one way to select the styles or the annotation and see what style they are is to click here under, you have all of these panels here, but under the select panel, you can click here on this dimension icon. And one thing to note too is you can expand this menu here. You just hold it and then click on it, and you can see this menu pops up. And you can click specific types of dimensions, and you will see linear dimensions are one type, and radial dimensions, actually it's this one, radial dimensions are another type. So what I would suggest you do is just click directly on it, and it uses, basically it runs the command called select dimension. So yeah, I would recommend you use that button, or just type it in. You can type in SEL and then dim. So that's the select dimension command, and that will select all of your dimensions. And it seems like the style is a bit different. No, it's just that some of them are linear and some of them are radial. So you can see there's two categories. So when you go to object properties, it will say it's varied because you have two different types of annotations. And so that's why it's usually best to go under the edit style settings. And now we know that we're editing the millimeter settings. So yeah, I got a little sidetracked, but basically we edited the millimeter architectural, and this is what it looks like. So let's go back to that style that we originally had, which is called millimeter small, and let's edit millimeter small this time. So here it's under 1, so let's see if we do 0.5, will it be half as big? Scale it, 0.5, and apply. Oh, it looks like you don't have to apply. As you probably noticed, let's see, go back up here, edit style. So you can see when I change anything, yeah, and this doesn't matter, by the way, the model scale here, it doesn't matter to change it here because you're scaling it here. So scale 1, let's say we want it to be half as large, 0.5. So when you press OK, you see that the change, they're not updated in real time. For the change that you make to any of these settings, for them to be applied, you need to not only click apply, but also press OK. So when you press OK, then yeah, here you go. So hopefully that makes sense. Yeah, I think that covers most of what I wanted to talk about. Everything else is pretty self-explanatory. You can always go back to edit style and you can figure out what needs to be changed. So if you wanted to change the font, you go up here and you can change it to a different font. And as you can see, nothing has changed, but then if I press apply, it applies the change. Now in the case of a scale, if you do twice as large, okay, you can see it doesn't give you the option to apply. So if you wanted to see that change, you will have to press OK, and then the scale updates. So that's a bit confusing, but the thing to remember is what you're seeing here is not really the end result until you press OK. And you can see you cannot go back to your viewport to make edits. And so that kind of tells you that you're still editing your properties and everything will be applied once you press OK.